So sales are up for Spawn, everyone else seems to be struggling, and independent comics are on the rise. Let's get into it. Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here on Ord's World. Today, we are taking a look at an article from GamesRadar.com. Todd McFarlane on Gunslinger Spawn, now dueling Spider-Gwen, and the health of comic shop sales. Now, we've known that comic shops have not been doing well during the whole pandemic, especially at the beginning of it. And, comic book sales overall are down. People are switching over to manga. That is becoming very popular. As a matter of fact, I just recently went to my comic shop. They have one wall, maybe 3/4 of the wall taken up by comic books, and then they have rows and rows of manga. So manga is for sure outselling comic books. But I will have to say that this Todd McFarlane Gunslinger comic does look good. But is it enough to persuade me pre-ordering it? I'm not sure. Let's take a look at the article. From GamesRadar.com, Todd McFarlane on Gunslinger Spawn, out dueling Spider-Gwen and the health of the comic shop sales. Todd McFarlane talks about Gunslinger Spawn sales records and the prospect of comic book sales post-pandemic. Like I said, this actually looks really cool. Todd McFarlane's always done good art. He's always been really great at splash panels. But let's continue. Todd McFarlane's Gunslinger #1 has generated retail pre-orders of 350,000 copies to the comic book stores, according to Todd McFarlane's production. So that's a lot, especially when it comes to popular books these days. We're beginning to see a surge in independent comics, more independent comic creators coming up and actually becoming successful through Kickstarters and things like that. So I think independent's what you guys are going to see is you're going to see independent comics explode here very shortly. And this may be, I know there have been some good books of recent, but very few and far between. And no big surprise that Spawn is going to outsell Spider-Gwen and probably any other Marvel comic that exists currently. On sale October 20th, the series debuts features interior art by Brett Booth, Phil Tan, and Kevin Keane, with 3 stories of the Gunslinger by McFarlane himself and writer Alice Cott. So I've never really been a fan of Todd McFarlane's writing. Always loved his art. His art is great, especially like I said, I said it earlier. His splash panels are amazing. This art is actually looking really good. I really love the way they did the horse. This looks pretty dope. This makes me intrigued. This is great artwork. Gunslinger Spawn sales figures are the latest in a series of what TMP is calling record-breaking numbers, which includes the June 23rd one-shot special Spawn Universe #1 and August 25th's King Spawn #1. What official sales records did Gunslinger Spawn #1 break? Again, according to TMP, its sales figures beat 2015's Spider-Gwen #1. As the best-selling title feature in an established character in the solo title debut in the Diamond Comics Distributors Direct Market era. So I remember when Spider-Gwen #1 came out, it was kind of a big deal. It sold a lot of issues. I'm not sure how many printings it went into, but the more they print a comic, the further the printings go, right? So they do one run, which is the first printing, second run, second printing, so on and so forth. I believe when Marvel picked up Star Wars again, when they had the merger between Star Wars and Disney, and then Marvel started doing the comics again, I believe that went into 10 or 12 printings of that first comic book. So interesting stuff. And this is all being claimed by TMP themselves. As far as I know, there's no official numbers out yet. Spider-Gwen and now Ghost Spider made her debut as Gwen Stacy Spider-Woman in 2014's Edge of Spider-Verse #2, before Spider-Gwen #1 in February of 2015. Gunslinger Spawn's path to a solo title was a little more protracted. He made his debut way back in 2002's Spawn #119. That's awesome. I've always appreciated the different Spawns out there. When I was a kid, I collected the different Spawn figures. They had I don't know if I can't remember if they had the Gunslinger Spawn back then, but you could get that action figure. You could get manga Spawn, or you could get, I believe I did actually have the manga Spawn, which was actually really cool. I loved those figures when I was a kid. As we say, these records are unofficial and a matter of interpretation, so who best to talk about the figures than TMP's Titler head himself, Todd McFarlane, the creator, publisher, president of Image Comics. Interpreter sat down with us to break down the figures, tell us what they mean to him, talks about the spirit of collecting comic books, and whether these strong sales figures are built on a foundation of strength, or are they part of a mid-90s like bubble. Here's the thing. I mean, people like Spawn. I think Spawn's going to be one of those things that it hasn't, had politics take over yet. So I think people are looking to this. And I mean, Gunslinger Spawn, it just sounds awesome, right? Like as a fan of Spawn, that's something that I would be interested in. So I think that this is a one-off. I don't think that this is actually going to surge, or there's like a big surge in comic book. I think it's a bubble, if there is even a bubble. This is just a one-off run as far as I know. So, I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments down below if I'm wrong, but I believe this is a one run. They also mention here that the global pandemic has changed fandom and how we consume comic books. Yeah, I think that's true. And I don't know if they're going to blame like the whole pandemic for comic book sales, or if they're going to say that the comic book sales, I think he actually says that the comic book sales have gone up since the pandemic, which I don't think that's the case at all, especially because of some of the products that we're getting and the identity politics that are thrown into there that nobody wants inside their comic books. We want to see superheroes, not identity politics. So in an interview with Todd McFarlane, Newsrama sat down to discuss the Gunslinger and its sales. So, to quote Todd, with Gunslinger Spawn, you're breaking your own records here. That has to feel pretty okay, right? Todd McFarlane, no. They're all slightly different. Laughs. I'm a baseball guy, so let's look at it in stats real quick. Spawn's universe was the biggest launch in the 21st century for Image. Cool. The next one, the biggest launch for a monthly title for King Spawn. Done. We have the biggest launch for a monthly title with a new character. Like I said, this is a character that has kind of been the same character, and this could contribute to why people are like buying Spawn comic books, is because he's a consistent character. And I'm using the definition of new here as somebody who hasn't had their own book. Not that we've seen them before, but they've never had their own title before. So he's talking about Gunslinger Spawn showing up in Spawn 119 and now getting his own book. Kind of the way like, Deadpool showed up in New Mutants and then got his own book. Just in that same vein is what they're talking about here. Newsrama, seems like we're in a full-blown Spawnescence right now. I'm guessing they mean Renaissance. I don't know. Terrible pun there. McFarlane responds, yes and no, definitely a resurgence of interest in the Spawn character and the mythology. Because, again, he's a consistent character. He hasn't changed, so people, I think, are flocking to that. All that, yes, I also think there's been a resurgence of comic books as a whole since the pandemic, and I think there's a resurgence in people taking a longer look at independent comic books right there. That's what I'm saying. We'll talk about that in a second. So Spawn in the last 18 months isn't the only indie book that's done well for itself. Okay, so break down the first issue of Guns. Okay, so they didn't even dive further into the conversation there, but I like how when he starts talking about independent comic books, the journalist decides to go off to something else, focus on the Gunslinger thing. But like Todd says here, he says that there's a resurgence in comic books, maybe in his brand, but Marvel definitely not, DC definitely not. These guys are scrambling to try to figure out what to do with these comic book sales, and it wouldn't surprise me if they outsourced these comic books or sold the rights to other people to do the comic books, which really might it may be the best way to go about it, just saying. But yeah, and then he goes on to say here, what does he say? Resurgence in people. There's a resurgence in people taking a longer look at independent books. He's talking about people like Comicsgate who are making independent comics. We're talking about Ethan Van Sciver making Cyberfraud. We're talking about Fatal J making Ninja Blast. If you guys want to go check that out, I think it is a great looking book. I'll leave the link in the pinned comment down below. Hopefully I'll remember to do that, but go check out Fatal J's book. There's all kinds of these great independent artists who are creating great comic books. Yes, I think that the next step is, at least in the comic book industry, is the way of the independent comic creator. These guys are creating comics and they're being very successful at creating comics. again, you know, to use Ethan Skyver as an example, writes a book, and now he's got action figures and, you know, merchandise, and he's creating something. Whether you like the guy, whether you disagree with him, whether you do like him, it doesn't matter. What he's doing is obviously successful. So again, we're just seeing this independent comic book thing grow and grow and grow, and I hope it does. So anyway, guys, if you guys have a comic book that you're creating independently, let me know in the comments down below. Go ahead and share the link if you can, if it allows you to do that. I would love to hear about it, and yeah, man, let the people know. All right, guys, so that is the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. If you guys have supported an independent comic artist, writer, whatever. I definitely encourage you guys to support independent creators, of course, me being one as well. Let's make it happen, guys. Find a comic book you like from an independent creator. Support them. Anyway, guys, if you're new to the channel, please make sure you hit that subscription button down below. Hit the bell for notifications. All of that good shit. Anyway, guys, thank you for taking the time to take a look at this video. And, yeah, like as always, guys, remember, party on.